I guess just for our audience that it is the idea that it does pay off, that when you're getting to that point to where your business is complex enough to where, you as the founder don't have this grasp on every bit of sales that's happening in your business. It's not all in your head anymore, but you need to make sure that you're trying to get people to put the data in the system so that then you can actually utilize it, at least get data in.
Mason, can I add one little thing there?
Yes, please.
Is that when it comes to getting the team to adopt these processes of adding data, one really key thing is to review that data all the time. So if they're seeing, wow, the entry of this new prospect's name actually shows up in the team meeting, they can draw that line between use and effort, and that can really make a difference.
I was just having this conversation yesterday or the day before about even going a step further than that, and I know that this would take some preparation, especially salespeople, because they're putting all of that goal, the attributes about the customer. What are they saying? What are they needing? When are they needing it, right? All of this gold.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Brewing Business with Brady. We are so excited about having today's guest, not just guest. We have Robin Sturgis and Alyssa McGinn. We're so excited to have you two. Thank you for being on the podcast today.
So Mason, thank you for having us. It's a real pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, looking forward to the conversation.
And for our guest, we are going to dive into all things about data today, that how a business can best use its data. And especially, a lot of big companies use data, but and have strategies around using it, but more specifically, how companies in the lower middle market can use their data. Private companies that a little bit bigger than mom and pop, how they can best use their data and to have the right strategies in place for it. So we are so excited. Let's get into a little background about Robin and Alyssa. So first off, we are going to ask a question about it that all of our guests should know, that this is a mother and daughter team that runs a really wonderful company called InfoFluency, that they are all things data, all things data analytics, all things about serving their customers really well and helping them with their data strategies. So Alyssa, Robin, first, obviously this is Brewing Business with Brady. We got to know what's in your coffee mug this morning.
This is my favorite time of year to drink coffee because all of the fall flavors. So I have a pumpkin spice coffee with a splash of pumpkin spice creamer.
Really, it's brown water with a whole lot of pumpkin spice sugar, right?
Hey, I don't know. I tried to have the coffee be good quality and get something. There's a place local here called Spice Merchant, shout out to them, and they actually have a lot of really high quality coffee. So I tried to support local and also have my pumpkin spice fix.
And Alyssa, you're calling in from Kansas, and so are you actually starting to experience the fall right now?
No, unfortunately. We've getting little touches here and there, but I think we have our last day in the 90s potentially today.
Okay, yeah. Robin and I don't get a fall anytime soon, right?
No. Oh.
December, maybe?
Sure am ready.
Yes, I think we're all ready. So yeah, Robin, what's in your mug today?
Well, very sadly, caffeine and I don't get along. As much as I adore coffee, I can't drink it. So I have Tazo tea. Passion is my favorite flavor. And I love this mug because it charges and then it keeps my tea hot. And so I can drink it really slowly. And I go with heavy doses of lemon and honey and kind of have a medicine ball type of a taste. And so really enjoy that.
Yeah, is that one of those Ember mugs?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
I used to have one of those. Yeah, I just wish they made them a little bit bigger. That
I agree.
You need, those are only 8 ounces, and it's I drink way more than 8 ounces in the morning.
I need this size of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's no real to-go element with this. You have to really be drinking this at your desk.
Yeah, for our guests that I met Robin and Alyssa, what was it, back in about February, March of this year, and I was just really surprised that having worked in corporate and as a corporate CFO, I'd come across many different data analytics firms or firms that would help you with your business intelligence activities. So, outside consultancy groups that, that was their focus as to how to help companies with their data and their data strategies. I had never come across a completely female-led mother and daughter team. And that blew my mind. And I think it's wonderful because obviously I told you that, it feels like the field is pretty male dominated. And so, I love seeing you two in this. And so for our audience though, that it's not just that I feel like it's unique to have a mother-daughter team in, a kind of a tech industry or a tech space like what you do. Oftentimes you see these family businesses and it's the father passing down to daughter or son, that it's a kind of a paternal activity. But Robin, you're obviously doing something unique in that it's a maternal activity, right? That you were bringing in your daughter into the fold of the business. And I'd love to understand or help our audience understand, how do you two make that work? You are a family business and it's a little bit more unique than I think what people are used to. And so, how do you two make that work? What makes it work really well for you?
Well, I'll start with what I think is the most important element, which is alignment. And I think that without it, I think some disastrous things can happen. But with it, I think you can build a really strong business. And by alignment, I mean, are you completely in sync with where you want to take the company, with what that roadmap is? Do you share kind of a passion around that and a priority around that? And then are you aligned in how you are going to keep both the professional and personal relationship healthy? I think that either of those alignments falls out of sync, and that's where you hear some of these horror stories about family businesses. And honestly, if you're starting a family business and you recognize even before day one, you don't have that kind of alignment, I would say run the other way. And if you do have that alignment, you can make some really great things happen together.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Alyssa.
I was just going to say that from my perspective, we've done two things really well. One is being very open in communication from the very beginning of what each other wants and needs. We've also allowed each other to, and I think her more allowing me to play in an area of strength instead of just coming in for the sake of coming in, but to really be in a role within the business that is what I think Patrick Lencioni calls the zone or working zone of genius, or your zone of genius. And I think, in a lot of family businesses, it's like, this just seems like it's an easy thing. I can just get a job and fill a gap, even though maybe it's not my strength. And so I think that, we're still learning, how can we best fit in roles within the company that fit our genius. And that doesn't mean we don't do things that we don't want to do or that aren't perfectly suited for us, because, we're still a small team, so we still both wear a lot of hats. But so I think that's one thing we do really well. And I think secondly is that, ironically, the personal and the professional is like this. We actually don't separate those things out really. And I think that some people would say that, I don't know, I think there's lines of thinking that are like, you should keep that separate. And even our business coach asked me the other day, was like, how do you guys keep that segregated? And I'm like, we don't really. We were on the phone yesterday, and it went from, hey, when are we coming to Houston for a family trip and talk about my kids, all the way to, strategy around something for the business. And it just kind of ebbs and flows back and forth. And I think some may cause problem with that or see that that's a problem, but I think that it makes it work.
Yeah, I mean,
I want to.
Oh, go ahead, Robin.
Sorry, Mason. I just wanted to add one quick thing to that, is that I think another thing we've done well is we have allowed ourselves to be pushed by the strength of the other one. So, Alyssa's very much a visionary. She can think big. She can think about the future. And I'm not as strong at all in that, but I allow her to push me in that and grow me in that. And then, she doesn't love the spreadsheets or the numbers, and she allows me to push her in that. And so I think it's really part of the the working mix is to allow ourselves to be grown by the other person.
I guess the takeaway I get from it's you made a business decision first in bringing, and having each other work together. That, and I don't mean to say that flippantly, like it had to work for the business. That I think oftentimes people in family businesses are just like, yeah, I want to build a legacy. I'm going to bring my kids in. It's like, yeah, but where do they fit and where are their strengths? And as you all identified, that you aligned, where does Alyssa fit in regards to her strengths and what's she going to bring to the business that's different than Robin? And it sounds like you two kind of have like a visionary operator mix together that works well. And so it really is kind of a business first aspect of it does have to make sense for the business first that, hey, would you hire this role if it wasn't your daughter? Either way, like, do you actually need this role? Right. And so that was really good. And I appreciate that too, Alyssa, that so many people say, you have to separate, personal versus business. Like, how do you do it? Right. Like, I don't know. I was going to ask how you do that, but I don't know how you would do that. That, even my wife does a couple activities in our business at Brady CFO. And I know there's still an aspect. It's like, I've got to talk to her like my wife. Right. Like if I didn't talk to her like my wife, it's like, yeah, she would get a little bit frustrated. Like, don't talk to me like an employee. I'm in this with you. Right. And so, it's not always, separation. That I've seen people that they even call their own dad, in a business meeting. They don't say dad, that they say, the person's name, et cetera. And to each their own in it. But yeah, I appreciate you saying that there isn't necessarily segregation, that it's a blend and it works for you. And so it's not a one size fits all. So that's great. Well, yeah, we are going to dive into data though, right? That we came here to talk data. So kind of first question up here. Business leaders, they are being told that they really need dashboards, scorecards, etc. And not even necessarily that they're being told, that they want to have a greater grasp on their business and what's happening, that they want to feel like, hey, they can tangibly see what's going on in their business and be able to do things and make decisions upon that. But we know that, you can't just snap your fingers and have these things instantaneously. That data can be messy, that even in my experience, I think, working in a, private, enterprise environment, like we spent $250,000, just trying to get our data and our dashboarding in a place to where it was effective for use. And so we know that there's some challenges there. What are some common challenges that you find that businesses face when trying to utilize their data effectively? And what would you suggest for them to overcome these challenges?
So I think specifically, even talking about like the lower middle market, so like maybe companies that are bigger than mom and pop, less than enterprise, which I know is a pretty big range there. But I think two things come to mind, and I didn't do an alliteration of this on purpose, but I think of access and lack of automation are probably the two biggest barriers that cause problems that we see. Is like, and they're very hand in hand, right? Like people start to say like, well, my data's in my financial system, and also there's data in their CRM. They start to identify all these different places that their data lies. And I think also you start to get in the mix. Oh, well, we downloaded and exported this spreadsheet, about 6 months ago. We do still need that data. And so there's all these spreadsheets also in the mix. And so I think that there's a how do we get that out, that access, and then there's a combination that's also really painful. I think a lot of times people underestimate what it will take to make the CRM and the accounting speak the same language in terms of just like how they're labeled, right? So like not to get too in the weeds, but the accounting system could label a customer using some specific labeling mechanism, and the CRM could do it a totally different way. So how do you know how do you match up the customers, right? As simple as that, but also that could be very confusing and very cumbersome for someone internally trying to figure that out. So I think that piece, and then married with that is that without any automation to pull the data or to put it somewhere or to transform it in some way to get it how you need, it's a super manual process, and that's when people start to like want to bang their head against the wall when they're trying to do that. And oftentimes executives want to see that monthly, probably at a minimum. And so someone or people in the company are just manually having to go through that process over and over again. We've heard of companies say that they spend up to 4 hours a week trying to get that done. That adds up super quick. So I would say access, I'll add a C, combining the data, and then automation of that process are probably the biggest barriers and challenges to having effective BI.
So to your point, especially within the lower middle market, some of these companies could be considering or have just barely implemented a CRM for the first time, right? That it's their first CRM. They've had it for a few years. It's still kind of new to them and how they're utilizing it. And then obviously they have their accounting system too. So you gave a really explicit example that I agree that how you could label something, how you could label the customer in the CRM versus how do you label the customer in the accounting system. And then you want to create a dashboard to show what's the sales per customer and different pipeline activity, et cetera, of upcoming projects. And you want to relate those two together. But if those two labels cannot be correlated against each other very easily, you have a real problem, right? Stuff like that, like how can businesses overcome that? Or what should they be thinking about to make their data cleaner or to prevent some of this, that they can ultimately get the data they need, but be anticipatory to make sure that they don't end up with just a massive mess on their hands that takes so much time to clean up to actually get the data, and to be able to work with it.
Yeah, I would say start with the end in mind, and you can take some steps way before you even invest in business intelligence. You can take some steps to set yourself up for success there. And it's things like recognizing that consistency, just like the example we talked about. Adopt a pattern of consistency in how you collect your data. And it's very simple things. It's like we said, use the exact same naming convention for your customer in every system. It'll take you a long way. Things like recognizing that the completion rate with which you enter the data is super important. And so put processes in place to make those fields required, or to teach your team the importance of filling out every field. And just those small things, when you are ready to really leverage that data and you're in a place where you can put some tools in place and put in those automations, then you have a much smoother path. And it requires some intentionality and some awareness that these things are important.
Yeah, I think that's a big emphasis. I mean, right, that even within Brady CFO, we're on accounting and finance as well, and we often find that clients have been able to grow to 30, 40 million, and we hop in and their bookkeeping it's like, we don't know how you got to 30, 40 million, and it's awesome that you did, but man, we're this is tough stuff here. You obviously have some great sales skills to get to 30, 40 million, right? And and so we're sitting there with the data, and and it's like, oh well, now they need a credit line, or they need this and this and that, and the bank or the bonding company, they need CPA reviews, and wow, there's all this cleanup. And the one thing that we always hear all the time is that, wow, I wish that I had emphasized this sooner, because it's put such a halt on our business by having to do 6 months worth of cleanup to then even go do a third party review by a CPA to then allow us to even get the credit line that we're looking to get, right? And that we couldn't even take advantage and bid on that project because we didn't have the credit to do it. And so, it's missed opportunities. And we always hear that, they wish that they had put a better emphasis on the quality of their records and their data a whole lot earlier. And so I guess just for our audience, that it is the idea that it does pay off, that when you're getting to that point to where your business is complex enough to where, you as the founder don't have this grasp on every, bit of sales that's happening in your business. And all of a sudden you have this, robust sales team. Well, you're going to need data on how they're performing and what the pipeline looks like. It's not all in your head anymore, but you need to make sure that you're trying to get people to put the data in the system so that then you can actually utilize it, at least get data in. So that was good insight.
Mason, can I add one little thing there?
Yes, please.
Is that when it comes to getting the team to adopt these processes of adding data, one really key thing is to, I won't go so far as to say hold them accountable to the data, but review that data all the time. So if they're seeing, wow, the entry of this new prospect's name actually shows up in the team meeting, then they can draw that line between use and effort, and that can really make a difference.
I was just having this conversation, I think yesterday or the day before, about even going a step further than that. And I know that this would take some preparation, but especially salespeople, because they're putting all of that gold, the attributes about the customer. What are they saying? What are they needing? When are they needing it, right? All of this gold. So you really want to incentivize them to put in as much data and as cleanly as possible. And so I was talking to someone about how even using the data to give them more leads and more opportunities that then could, that's money. They see leads, they see opportunities, that's money in their pocket, right? So it's how do you incentivize them more than just, hey, we're using this, right? But this is for you. If we have good data, we can do a lot with it to give you more opportunity and to give you more leads. And I think the same is true in other functions of the business, maybe just not as, operations. It's they can see real efficiencies, or they can see real process improvements, or, there's things that they can understand using dashboards or data. People get hooked on that and they want more and more and more. And so they're going to be I'm going to put this in super well and accurately because I know in a week or two, I'm going to get good stuff from this. So that's next level. But I think that's really key in creating a data culture too.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm interested in this one because, Robin, you alluded to Alyssa is your visionary, right? And, often what I find, and I've been reading this book. I really recommend it to you too as well. It's called The Synergist. And it talks about, 4 different leadership profiles within an organization: the visionary, the operator, processor, and the synergist, and how you need different elements or different roles of those. You need a visionary and operator as you get the business off the ground, and then eventually you're going to need a processor and you're going to need a synergist to get it through different stages of growth. But it alludes to the idea of visionaries. If you try to put them in a 2-hour meeting, they're gonna blow their minds of if they're not thinking big ideas and talking big ideas. If you can get a visionary to sit in a 2-hour meeting, if they're talking big ideas, but then to get into the granular, hey, let's actually understand what this data is saying. Even in my experience in working with visionaries, that they squirm at the idea of sitting there and actually diving into the data in a really deep way sometimes, right? It feels like there's key people that use data. And so I'm interested to understand, do you think dashboards for business leaders are effective tools that are consistently utilized directly by the business leader, but the dashboard is being utilized by the business leader? Or do you think business leaders need analysts to interpret the data and provide them with the insights, and it's just a quick shot hey, this is what we found, this is what you need to go do? What do you think is actually happening, or what do you think business leaders are actually doing, and what works?
Well, I have a pretty strong opinion about this. So I believe really at my core that it's the analyst's role and job to present data in a very clear and glanceable, digestible manner. If the data is well presented, then I don't think that the executive or the dashboard consumer needs hand-holding from that analyst. But the analyst has to do the good work on the back end as they are creating to serve that executive well, so that they are the person who is using that data on a regular and active basis. And there are certainly more personality types or people who are wired more so to gravitate to that, more naturally, others who aren't. But I think the analyst who does a really good job can serve everyone, whether they're naturally inclined to, be driven from a dashboard or not. if it's made easy and the information is very digestible, then I think absolutely every executive can be, consuming that business information and making decisions on it from the dashboard without the analyst's handholding.
I too believe that a lot has to do with the analysts, that, you can't just build a dashboard and hand it off and that, it's going to be a perfect decision-making tool. That it does take time to dive into that data a little bit more and to really get the insights from it. And some business leaders, they may not have the personality nor the time to dive in a really big way. And so the analyst serves to help to do that. So it really does take a strong person, that, right? But I'm also interested to understand between you two that I've also seen instances where, a report can go out on email and over a few weeks, that report stops getting read. Nobody's paying attention to it. And then, whoever makes the report is getting frustrated that nobody's reading it. And then, the decision makers are coming back and just asking, hey, tell me about this. And they're like, it's in the report, right? And it's so clear that nobody's reading it. I'm really interested to understand, what are your suggestions to business leaders to make sure that doesn't happen, that, dashboards built for them in a BI tool or different reports don't just become something that ends up in the email inbox and eventually, gets marked red when nobody's actually reading it.
Okay, I feel like part of the problem in that is some business societal pressure that we need to do monthly reports that get sent out. So this is kind of a hot take, I will say, us being a reporting and analytics company. I don't think that the type of monthly reports that you're talking about are always the best answer, right? And so I think what we find to work the best is we start with an executive team or a business owner, and in our discovery, it's very clear very quickly what is on top of mind for them. What is keeping them up at night? What questions, do they need to answer? And, a lot of that is around revenue, profitability, sales, growth, as you can imagine. And so we start the BI process or the dashboards circling around that topic, that burning question that they need answered. And if their dashboard is central to answering that question and almost maybe predominantly answering that question, they're not going to let us sit in their email. It's not going to be a monthly report. It's going to be, this is the key to my needs and my questions. And so I think that we were talking the other day, it's that creates analytics to be, or that is the gateway drug to data and analytics, right? It's giving them access to what they actually want to see in a way that makes sense. And then they're like, I want more. What about this? What about this? What about this? And it's not just a monthly report anymore that checks a box. It is insight. And I know that they're probably similar, right? The report may show something similar to what the dashboard showed that gave them insight into, why their West region wasn't producing as highly as their East. But it's all about the process of uncovering those business questions and providing them the answers to them and going to it from a top-down approach and rather than a business process check-the-box approach.
There's also some interesting ways to leverage email and to do so in a way that gives, I'm going to be bold here, gives permission to ignore the email. And what I mean by that is that the business intelligence tools are smart enough to customize that subject line of the email and maybe even customize color to say there's no change. Ignore this. It's all fine. And then it's also smart enough to have picked up the exception or the outlier to say, pay attention to this. And
Yep.
So then it's not this, it's the report again, ignore it. It's much more, okay, I'm told to ignore this, or, hey, I need to stop and really pay attention. And that can be automated and use the tools that are readily available on the market to make those things happen.
I love what you just said there, Robin, that, highlighting okay, and again, it comes back to that concept of the analyst too, right? The strength of the analyst and being able to help that business leader interpret the information and say, yeah, no big deal here. Big deal here. Like, we have a problem. Houston, come on, and we have a problem. We need to go resolve something. And to your point that, when 9 out of 10 of the reports getting sent across, say, like, a weekly kind of scorecard, and 9 out of 10 appeared to be perfectly fine. There's nothing to worry about. And, the people sending the reports are wondering, is anybody reading this? And then finally something comes across and it's important, and they get frustrated that nobody's listening. And oftentimes I see, like, it's a controller or somebody in the accounting department that's thinking, hey, nobody seems to be paying attention to this stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, but you have created this routine that specifically when you have a problem or there is something, here, I tell them, hop on the phone and call that, say, this is the report, that this is the one that I really need you to look at. Send it and say, there's the data for you, but this is the one I really need you to look at. Take a look at it. And the data is at their fingertips, that the business owner or the business leader doesn't need to go ask for an additional dashboard or additional information. You've packaged it for them already. It's just you're now emphasizing that, hey, this is the one I need your help with. So I appreciate that because, it does come back a little bit to that, the person making the report, understanding when to communicate. Like, it doesn't get away from still understanding good quality communication that, hey, something's wrong here, that something's up and, there's a fire here. I can say, there's a fire, Robin. Or I can say, there's a fire, Robin, right?
Yes.
Come on now. So, well, that's good.
I think too, Mason, as a visionary minded person, I think that there's some rewiring of what data can do for you, because it's just very synonymous with boring, right? Like, for a lot of people, like, data is financial, it is some confusing P&L, it is just nothing I'm really interested in. But I think when that paradigm gets shifted to data is the way to unlock creative thinking, to unlock, true visionary ability, right? It's no longer just like, oh, I want to do this, but it's like, I just start getting super excited about it in a strategic way. But I think a lot of business leaders, like, I think statistically, are visionaries. And so it's almost like a paradigm shift from report to changing that word or that understanding to mean something else that's more exciting. So I think that could be part of it too.
There's a couple other things that I would add to kind of this idea of delivering the dashboard in a way that is easily consumed by the executive. And two things I think come into play. And one is embedding. If there is a platform that they use all the time, if they're in their ERP all the time, embed those dashboards into their system of truth or their system of activity, so that they don't have to look at email. Like, it's right there for them, and that they can still ignore it, no doubt, but that makes it easier. And then the other thing too is display that, especially if you're in an in-person environment. Use the big screen in the break room, and put the dashboard up there. Put it in people's path of where they work, and don't force them into their inbox to get the information.
I've even seen, I think that there's a place even for receiving reports, an email or an ERP too, but I've also seen just a great amount of success, like, bring the report or the data into the weekly meeting, right? And like review it together. Like, emphasize that, hey, what does this data mean? And I've even seen that when each person is, there's a particular accountability for, if you have a KPI and you're tracking actual results, that there's assigned accountability that a person has to be responsible to answer, why is that, metric, why is the metric not hitting KPI right now? And when you start getting into that level, it's a whole different ballgame. But I definitely have felt that I've seen too, when you start just putting the data out there in the open for people to talk about, all of a sudden, even if you don't purely sign accountability to a particular metric, like, just having the data out in the open and making sure that people are talking about it, all of a sudden you see results too, right? That I saw an organization where it was clear that, it was a parent company with 7 underlying subsidiaries to it, and really struggling with having everybody close their monthly books on time. So, hey, we put, a tracking mechanism in place to where we track that people are, have to submit it by this date, and it's going to be recorded on just kind of a scorecard like, hey, when did everybody start, or when did everybody submit their final monthly financials or their closed financials? And all of a sudden, just by doing that, it wasn't even that there's a reward, there's any disciplinary action or anything. All of a sudden, by doing that, 2 weeks came off of everybody's monthly close immediately, right? So sometimes just measuring it means something. But I think something about having the peer aspect of things that a lot of emails don't get watched, right? But all of a sudden you're in a group and you're talking about your data. Yeah, and if you have to begin to answer what's going on, yeah, that helps build that data culture too. At least from my experience.
And then does it become competitive? Like, who closed their books the quickest?
No, it does. There's one gal in the organization that she will submit it first and she'll say, hey, where's my reward? It's just a joke, right? But she's like, yep, I was in first, and it's fun because it's all healthy, but it's that aspect that what gets measured gets improved, right?